We are now in the third session of our fiscal year 17 budget, and we're meeting at the police station. It's January 17th? 18th. I'm sorry. I'm looking to it. We've got a number of items to get through tonight, so we'll probably get right in and onto them. Some of these are basically bringing us up to date on what we've already done. Actions to date relative to the highway fund. You will recall, just to again repeat, but certain activities not going to happen in this fiscal year, which will serve to mitigate some of the increases. That 1, 2, 3, pretty much it.
Yes.
Any questions on those areas that Stu talked about that are not going to be done this year? Basically, I think it spells out itself. Unless you want to talk about it, I don't think we.
Well, I sent out a memorandum for the last, before the last meeting,
Yep.
explaining why the cuts were made, but I just wanted to highlight that this is what actually has been done as we have moved through the process.
We talked about and actually moved to talk about the Lake Perrin Lake House contribution of $15,000. This will be added to that, which brings the total on that line item to $17,800. I won't go into all the numbers there if you're interested in them. The board approved the BBC budget request and accepted this because they sort of worked in harmony. Accepted reductions in the general fund revenue of $7,000 and additions in the general fund budget line of $13,400 for a contract with BBC to aid in downtown maintenance. So those things we actually did move and accepted on Saturday.
Tom, just to be clear, I'm sorry about.
No, you're not. It's fine because it's a bifurcated process.
All right, I'm not sorry. Stu, be clear on what has been reduced from the budget. Are the top three things actions to date?
Yes.
Okay.
Remember, we removed the Route 9 bridge project from the budget. It was estimated to cost us around, I think we had budgeted for $225,000 this year. A combination of a bridge grant of $175,000 that was anticipated, plus another $50,000 to do the project at least over 2 fiscal years. We were pretty much informed by the Secretary of Transportation that we would probably not be eligible for the 175, and that they were going to put that bridge in their particular construction line, either FY, I think it was 17 or 18. So we pulled it out of our budget. It essentially reduces the revenue by 175. It cuts the budget by 225. And initially, I had added that $50,000 into the reserve, which would have made the reserve in that line $100,000. But because of the reduction in revenue and the impact on the overall tax rate, I pulled that $50,000 out of the reserve, essentially leaving the reserve at $50,000, which is what it was last year.
Okay, so the total amount that will be reduced from the budget is what figure?
$225,000.
No, but the delta's 50.
Yeah.
Because the revenue's coming in at 175.
But we don't generally budget the revenues, we just shut them for purposes of
Right.
tax calculation.
So the implication is only 50.
That's correct.
Is how much?
50,000.
50,000. Okay.
Any other questions on that, John?
No, just
No, one time. Tonight we're looking at going down to the considerations of the new matters. We haven't spent too much time on BCRC. Folks had requested an increase which amounts to $290, I think, is that right?
That's correct.
So, anything like under $300 should not be no, just saying. But it's a reasonable request. But is there any question on that one? And I think I'd like to deal with these.
Mr. Chairman, remind us what BCRC stands for and
Bennington
what they
County,
do.
Bennington County Regional Commission.
And who's in charge of that?
Jim Sullivan?
Jim Sullivan and Bill Colvin works for them.
We are members of the Bennington County Regional Commission. The budget request, although it goes into the agency line items, is really a dues that we pay to BCRC for the services they provide us. Much as you would be if you were a chamber member, or the VLCT, that's another one that we pay a dues to of around $18,000 a year because they provide services to us. Both planning, and in the case of BCRC now, they're also assisting with economic development and a host of other issues. Mapping, they do all of our GIS mapping for us, and that doesn't cost us anything.
Good.
I think maybe we could take these by, because some are pretty nominal. Could I get a motion for consideration of that?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion on that BCRC request? All in favor signify by aye. Raise your hand. It looks like it's a 7-4 and none against. Bennington Free Library, we heard the presentation from Lynn on.
I had a quick question, actually. So
Sure.
on a few of the agencies, the numbers didn't seem to jive in that one in particular. Like you said, it was a small adjustment, but we were at page 12.
Yep.
The actual budget. So 2015, we were looking at 14,260, and proposed budget was, or 2016 was 14,555, so that was level, wasn't it? In 2017, it's 14,555 as well. Or 14,550.
Yeah, the actual no, thank you for asking, John. All of the agencies that are shown here are shown at last year's
Level.
number.
Okay.
Their request is higher. But when we did the budget for calculating tax purposes, we put them in at last year's level funding with the understanding that the board would make a determination on those that go into the budget. And those are the BCRC, the Free Library, the McCullough Library, North Bennington Rec, and you've really already decided Parent Rec.
Right.
Those go into the budget, they don't appear on the ballot. Every other agency that appears on the ballot, either by petition or by proxy because they were successful last year.
So the increase would go in there after we agree on it?
That's
And
correct.
you'll show us that new budget
That's right.
afterwards?
So we develop a whole new budget, give you new tax implications, and have that ready for you Monday night.
Yeah, I saw that with the library as well. I think that one was off slightly. Okay.
Number two, relative to the Bennington Free Library, for a $25,000 increase to that line item. And again, we're only putting this in the proposed budget, not approving the budget. The town folks will do that.
Do we need a motion
I
on
will move
number
that
2?
increase.
I'm sorry.
Do we need a motion on number 2?
Yeah, that's just what, I'm sorry, that's Bennington Free Library.
I'll move we
Yeah,
accept the
yeah.
increase.
In a second?
Second.
Other discussion on the Bennington Free Library?
I think it's just important that we know that most of these cost increases are being driven by mandated minimum wage in this particular line. Line item.
That's, and I think when we talk about 3, it'll be the same rationale, reason, as I'm assuming. All in favor of the line item increase of $25,000 for the Bennington Free Library, signify by aye.
Aye.
And that's everyone voting for, is that right? Jim, you're voting for?
Yes.
7 in favor. Number 3 is the McCullough Library.
I'm sorry, just to, did you say an increase of 25,000?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the Bennington Library?
Bennington.
Bennington
Yeah, yeah,
Library
yeah.
was requesting $437.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it's in McCullough Library is looking for a $4,100 increase. And could you share, we haven't got anyone to.
Yeah, we did, I didn't invite them this year because their increase is actually a little less than 3%. It's driven principally by the minimum wage increase and by healthcare costs. They don't have a ton of full-time employees. We actually saw that they just hired a new director at the paper today. So it's a relatively modest increase they're asking for. They're going from 13,900 last year. If we approve this request, they would be at 18,000.
3% relative to what?
Total budget, total.
Total budget,
Agencies?
the library. we call it
No,
library.
the
The
Oh,
budget-
they're-
So 3% is only if you calculate it since 2004 or something, right?
No,
No, no, I mean, they have not been asking for large increases over the years. And this one really mirrors what I think it
if you look at their salary and benefits cost on their application,
Yeah.
their salaries are going from 77.8 to 84,445 because of the minimum wage, which is a difference of 66.45, and they're only asking for a $4,100 increase.
So you're saying that delta is the 3% increase?
It's, no,
It looks like it's a 26% increase, but that's because it hasn't been requested for a long time, right?
no.
No.
So Sue's saying it's a 3% increase based on their entire budget, but you're looking at the increase based on their request from us.
I see.
And that's what I was asking
I
about
see.
too, because
I see. Okay.
I think, Stu, is that correct?
Yes, I mean, their entire budget is $118,000 proposed this year. It was $107,750 last year. It's a substantial increase in the wages and benefits cost
Mhm.
of $6,600. That's pretty much driving their entire increase. They received from the Village of North Bennington $16,000. They received from the town of Shaftesbury $8,000. They're requesting $18,000 from the town of Bennington.
Stu, you said that this is largely driven by an increase in the minimum wage. So what is the minimum wage for the workers at both the McCullough Library and the Bennington?
It's going from $5.93 to $6. We talked about that. 610, is it? No, not yet.
No, not yet.
That's the max.
It's going to 960 from 853, or
Right,
863.
right.
There you go.
And how many, do you know offhand, and you probably don't, I won't hold your feet to the fire on this, but how many of these people are full-time and rhetorically, how the hell are they able to live on that kind of money?
Well, I can't answer the rhetorical question because that's a question that doesn't demand an answer. I think North Bennington either has one or two full-time people, perhaps only 1.5 if you count full-time equivalents.
Because their staff is two. which is
No,
on their-
the director and the
on their-
children.
The director and the children's library, there's two people.
Thank you, Sharon. Why don't you answer this question?
I don't know, I'm just looking at the information that you gave us. Not to figure out.
So I understand the question, the 3% that you were talking about, of their total budget. I understand that. And I think I had two questions about this budget, but neither one of them should be implied, should imply any kind of desire not to fund this. This is a great library. My kids use it a lot, and they do a lot with just two people. But I did wonder about the increase in the payroll taxes, and largely that's because I don't know how they work. But it seemed like they jumped from 6,000 to 10,000, which was a big jump. I just didn't know if that was a mistake, or it doesn't seem like the payroll taxes should jump $4,000.
I don't think that may be miswritten. The payroll tax is still 7.65%.
And this is more like a 13% increase, so it didn't.
I don't think they're referencing just the payroll tax.
Okay. There might be other things rolled into that line item. I should have called and asked about this today, I'm sorry.
I don't have an answer for it,
Okay.
because I didn't ask them that question.
Do you want to have that question answered before we deal with that line item, Don?
Well, a bit torn. I suspect that they have a good reason for it. I just don't know what the answer to it is.
Yeah, it looks like it's about a $3,800 increase right now, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
From 15 to 16?
And again, I'm sorry I didn't call during the day for this, Stuart. I just couldn't get free.
And what we could do is move for it, and then ask, and then subject to confirmation from Stu as to the breakdown of the tax scenario.
How about that?
Yeah.
I suspect it's right, but it'd be great just to confirm that that's not a math error.
Yeah, I can make that call.
Just maybe they could just break that down on their budget relative to how the impact was. And then try to figure out what they did. Do you, is that to accept?
Then I'll move we accept the $4,100 increase for the color library,
Second.
Is that subject to getting the confirmation?
subject to the confirmation of the payroll taxes.
And it's an increase in taxes, basically. Because there may be another,
That is too high.
yeah, it might be another. So,
And it might be typos.
so it's a subject to, and if it's something that doesn't hold water, so we should make an adjustment relative to what they can demonstrate is the actual increase. That would get to the concern that we have.
We're looking at about $1 per hour increase in the minimum wage coming up every year for the next couple of years, or not?
Yeah.
960, I think next year it goes to 10, or whatever it is.
I mean, so we're gonna be looking at, if we just extrapolate this out over the next couple of years, I mean, we're 25,000 in Bennington, and 5,000, call it 4,000 here in North Bennington, just as the libraries alone,
Yeah.
plus our own
Plus,
increases.
yeah, our general fund is going to be
It's gonna be
big.
substantially, so,
That's going to
there's
impact.
not a lot you can do about it, but it's like,
Yeah.
it's coming down from, the state, pushed down on the local levels.
And the pressure is still there, I think, in the legislature to push it to 12,
Yeah.
Right.
which is considered a little wage.
Right, which, there's arguments for and against on both sides, but, we're taking one pot of money and we're just pushing it out to another group of people that needs to fund it.
Yeah.
And it's-
And those discretionary activities or those things that we would like to get done are going to get pushed further and further out.
Correct.
Because we haven't got the ability to do it. So it's not an encouragement for the future, but you've got to, I guess you have to deal with the realities of today, anticipating tomorrow. And I think we talk about that as we get into how we want to handle the big budget, big capital items later on, because they're going to be impacted.
Right, and I think, some of these agencies, we need to make it clear to them coming into the next budget session that maybe they need to find ways to cut some costs in some other areas. I don't think it's, it should be on our shoulders to push it off onto these complete increases year after year onto the taxpayers when we're mandated to do certain things as well, so.
We have to cut things in services, and they should be looking at cutting in services as well, right?
Absolutely.
This also, Thomas, I mentioned this last meeting, I don't want to belabor it, but I do just not want it to go away. I recognize it's a 3% increase in their budget, but it's a 26% increase in their request to us. So it's still a small number, and I understand that, but particularly if an agency or someone that we work with hasn't come to us since 2004 to ask for an increase, it'd be nice not to have the increases be proportionally quite so high. It'd be nice to know that they were coming, and maybe even we think about some sort of a guidance piece that we ask them to look at, which limits the the amount that they would request on a year-to-year basis based on that.
I tried to look back in my old budgets to see how much, and specifically their information that they've sent us, to see how much they've asked for from other towns, to see if the increase from the other towns was this, about the same as it was for us. I couldn't find it. I'm assuming they're increasing their requests, but.
Well, can we pull that policy for review at our next meeting?
I don't see why we can't, but I don't think there is a policy.
We don't have a policy that deals with the agencies that we put into the budget. Our policy is those agencies that are voted out.
Yeah. But,
Oh, I understand.
yeah. So I think what we're talking about is either a policy or guidance. If you come before us next round, you're going to be expecting that we're going to be looking at what Justin said. Also, if you haven't been before us for years and years, don't expect that we're going to be piggybacking on the lack of your diligence.
Well, actually, I think, if I recall, North Bennington's gotten a fairly good increase from us over at least the last 2 to 3 years. It's been fairly consistent.
But what they say in their letter, though, is that
But it's not.
yeah. Although there have been minimal increases in funding, the library has not requested a significant increase from the town of Bennington since 2004.
Significant can be subjective.
Yeah, it's very subjective, yeah.
Yeah.
Point taken.
Yeah.
I guess I just, you know,
No,
if
it wasn't just this one you were talking about, you were talking about across the spectrum, whether it was BBC or any of the others, not to wait.
That's right.
And I think that's a good
And
point.
let it build up, and then come and say, well, you know, if you amortize it over the last 10 years, we're not asking for very much, but.
But I think it's probably a point well taken. I'm just wondering if it's topical to do it like next board meeting or after, April, May or something as part of a real review process.
It would be for next year's budget session, I think. I'd
But I
like
think you
to,
need
I just don't want to lose track of
In all
it.
fairness, you just need to give the agencies a heads up
Yeah.
well ahead of time. So
Right.
Especially if we're doing it as a
if
guidance
they did it like
piece.
the end of the summer, it would be
Mhm.
something.
And you know, obviously these are both two well-respected organizations, and I'm sure they both do a fantastic job of what they're set out to do. But we also, we're a town of 15,000 people, and we have two public libraries that we're funding. I just don't know if there's a way to make some synergies between the two organizations. I mean, nobody ever wants them all together and lose their autonomy.
We can't get Bennington to join us.
Yeah.
We gotta get the
Right,
libraries.
but again, I mean, we're paying, we have two directors.
Yeah.
You know, there's costs all down the line for two organizations, and maybe you could look into, to be informed in one.
And they are nearly 4% of our entire budget.
Right.
And-
Is that right? Is that accurate, Sue?
Well, you've got,
All
4% of our budget.
well,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's in excess of 600.
I think that's just the libraries alone, correct? I mean, with Bennington, what was the complete?
437, and then the North Bennington was 8, will be 18. So 4% is pretty close.
Oh, $500,000.
Yeah, 455.
I would defer to anyone that wants to take on two independent or public libraries. One that exists since 1863, the other one probably about the same time. I think we have a better chance of having Bennington Rural Fire come in than we have combining these two.
No, it's certain, and I'm not necessarily suggesting it, but it's questions I have to ask, because as we year after year, see these increases. And
Yeah.
We're not doing our job if we're not asking the questions.
No.
No, that's right. I don't mean to diminish you in any way, Justin. That's a 4% figure is an eye opener.
Right.
But I can't underestimate the value of,
No, they're very valuable,
Of,
and that's the thing,
library.
is you gotta find that line,
What, do they
This is
need
a
two
pretty frugal
directors, all
outfit,
those
though.
things?
This is a pretty frugal outfit. This North Bennington Library, 2 people, they run a lot of kids through there. But yeah, I like that thinking, Justin. I think we should go ahead and vote on this.
Okay, the discussion has been completed. All those in favor, subject to having that information verified, Stu, and shared with us. All in favor of the North Bennington, McCullough Library request? Aye. Anyone opposed? One opposed. 6-4 and 1 against. Going to the North Bennington Rec, it's a level fund, 6,000. Just share with us, Stu, why we're spending specific time on this.
Well, yeah, North Bennington we've always funded a portion of the North Bennington Recreation Program over the years. For a long time, it stayed right level at $5,000. They weren't looking for anything extra from us. Last year, we turned over to them the maintenance of Welling Field, which is located in the village of North Bennington, but we had been maintaining it over the years because at one time, town recreational programs were hindered there. We don't use that field anymore. It's mostly the North Bennington activities that take place there. We suggested they take it over. They asked the board last year if it would increase their allocation to 6,000 to give them the money to do that. They actually mow it, maintain it, keep it up, make sure the fences stay up, and the board agreed. And so we're now at 6,000. We've not asked for an increase.
Thoughts on previous, that was 5,000. They were, It's now 6. Question, I guess, is whether or not you want to maintain that level of support. Any discussion?
I'll move we accept the
I'll second that.
$6,000.
Discussion on that line?
Just looking at things as a whole, in terms of the contribution to North Bennington events and recreation, I've always felt that like the Lake Perrin, we didn't contribute all that much towards, they didn't ask for any increases necessarily. But how does that, when it comes to the taxpayers and what they contribute to this budget, how does that spread across what we give to their recreation facilities compared to what they're getting if they were to come to Bennington recreation as well?
Old Bennington and North Bennington both pay the general fund tax to the town of Bennington. So that's whatever it was last year, 58, 59 cents per hundred. And so if you take, they're contributing certainly to the recreation programs of the town of Bennington. And they should. They're in a village and they certainly get the advantage. But I think that the thinking was when they came to us originally, and it was before I became manager, it was that, you know, yes, we help using our general fund tax. Can you help us back? And if you think about it, a $6,000 appropriation, they're paying their fair share of that appropriation equally. So in a way, it's money that they're paying in.
Well, that's what I was getting to, because it seems like a very small line item for North Bennington Recreation when they are contributing to all the other activities happening. And although they do come to Bennington, a lot of the children per se would just run around North Bennington and enjoy those ball fields or whatever they are, so.
But they do a lot for their recreation.
Well, absolutely.
I mean, between Lake Perrin and this, they've always got something going on.
That's what he's saying.
Right, that's exactly what I'm saying, and I think this line is so small, even with the increase. But I just wanted to kind of
It's like
look at that.
less than 13,960 units or that one time
Yeah, exactly.
shot. It's pretty nominal for what
I think so.
we're getting for our return.
And it does feel like we have to do a seat of the pants thing, because there's no real way of calculating what they're due or what they're owed. You know, we have a, whatever, $422,000 recreation budget for Bennington, but that includes the pool and the Willow Park and lots of shared facilities that North Bennington would use. So I don't know how we'd ever figure out exactly
No, I
what
don't
their
think you
fair
could.
share is. So it feels to me like if they're asking for 6,000, it's a modest number. It seems like sure, we should support that.
Yeah.
Further discussion? The pending motion? All in favor of the $6,000 line item? Aye. Looks like a unanimous 7-0. We then have police budget returning 2. We had some initial discussion relative to the electronic control devices. We decided to sort of punt this one down until we got through a little further down the road. The increase for the 13 units would amount to $27,000 or $21,500 for 10 devices. Maybe Stu or Chief can just explain why we've gone from 13 to 10 and
I'll leave that to the chief.
So the question is why we went from 13 to 10?
Yeah.
So we went from 26 to 13 to make it a little more reasonable.
So there's even more reason?
This, and what happened was 13 would outfit approximately 1/2 of the police department. So I wanted to phase this in over 2 years and not outfit everyone. So that's how we got to the 27. And then 2 weeks ago when I presented the police department budget, we did some quick math to outfit the department with 10. That would put approximately 3 electronic control devices on each shift. And we have to figure in people being on days off or on vacation or what have you. So that's where we got to the 21.5 is by doing the math and you know, making the reduction there. So.
And I think, Chief, you also indicated at that meeting that it would be unlikely that it would be outfitting the detectives with these devices.
That is correct. That was coming next. Our detectives have opted not to carry electronic control devices. So since we have 3 detectives, it's easy to go from the 13 to the 10 And once this is approved, I'll be back next year to ask for the 13.
Okay. Jim?
Mr. Chairman, Chief, as you noted, or as you may remember, at our earliest budget meeting, I had some concerns about these devices. And I'm confident that whatever training you will provide with respect to the use of these devices will be more than adequate and thorough. However, I'm just off the top of my mind, I was thinking, wouldn't it be interesting to see how these devices work on individuals? And I'd like to volunteer the rest of my board members to demonstrate that. However, I can guarantee you that when you do decide to use them, I will be sick or out of town.
Not surprised.
What's your point, Jim? Yes.
That I endorse the use and the adoption of this equipment, because it's going to mean that, you know, there are going to be fewer injuries to our police department. And
Would you like to make a motion to that effect, Jim?
That's a long-winded one.
Yeah, well, that's okay. We'll take it.
I make a motion that we adopt and endorse the $27,000 for these ECDs for the town of Bennington Police Department.
I think, if I'm following right, the request is now 10, which brings that price down.
21,000 something.
Yeah.
21,500.
Yeah.
There, that'll do.
So is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. Discussion relative to the value and the thoughts.
I have a question, Chief, about the technology. I don't know how fast it's changing. I don't know very much about it, but I do know that in my line of work, we often try to get the same unit for everybody that needs one so that they can be serviced the same way and troubleshot the same way. Is there any danger in splitting this over 2 years that you'll end up with two different products that are...
I mean, the technology with the electronic control devices is always changing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really not concerned from speaking with other chiefs and speaking with Taser. The cartridges are the same, which is what's most important to me. And, you know, if it comes with an additional gadget next year of a flashlight on it or whatever, then we just deal with that. But I'm really not concerned with spreading this over 2 years.
Right, so there's really no hardship, you don't feel then in trying to spread it out, easing into it.
No, and I think that's probably in all honesty, I think, you know, when I proposed this in the budget, I thought this was the best way, was to just, as you said, ease into it.
Okay.
Let's purchase them, let's make sure they're going to be effective. I was on the telephone today with a law enforcement officer in Pittsfield, and we were discussing that the Bennington Police Department does not currently have tasers, and his response was, "Are you kidding me?" You know, and I think that as Jim said, the main focus here is the safety of the officers, followed by the safety of people in our community that may not be able to make good decisions at a particular time, and that we not have to go hands-on with these people. So I think that this is a wise investment on the part of the board, and I would ask that you support it, and let's put it to the voters and ask them to support the budget and make this department safer.
Looking at the lifespan of these tasers, and I'm sorry if you answered this already, I just can't recall. What is the anticipated use of each of these tasers? Should we have to anticipate replacing this in 5 years, in 3 years?
The anticipated replacement is in 5 years. However, in working with a particular electronic control device company, there is a program that we can buy into, whereas in 5 years we will have paid enough money so that we can replace these, if my understanding of the contract is correct.
Okay.
Which I believe it is.
Yeah, I just didn't know if, you know, obviously to get off the ground, we'd want to get these into the hands of the officers sooner rather than later and at the rate that you're requesting. But then soon after, I think there's a few different line items where we've tried to space out the replacement of various products over their lifespan. So we were saying we would replace, say, 3 a year or whatever it turns out to be.
This particular company, it is a 5-year plan. The other part of it is, of course, you know, like a typical salesman, they try to get you to buy things that you may or may not necessarily need. So Of course, their process is, or their thought process is, well, you should have a couple of extra in the office. I'm not prepared to ask you to do that, because if we were to have one break or become broken as a result of an incident, we would send it back, get it repaired, and get it right back. Having to just buy a couple of extras, I'm not asking for that. Let's go with the 10, let's put them in service, and let's see what happens.
So to fully equip the department, we're talking 23 to 2060 is roughly $50,000 range to equip
Yes.
the entire department.
That is correct.
And so ideally, this would become a budget line item for $10,000 a year, thereabout?
No, what I'd like to do is phase it out so that, this year is 10, next year we'll buy 10, and then we'll have a period of time and we'll just monitor how they're performing and hopefully be able to get that into the equipment line so the impact on the budget is minimal. So in other words, if we start to realize that I may have 3 that are failing, perhaps we put in for those 3 and replace them. Instead of asking, every 5 years and then the 6th year for the same amount of money. So I try to maintain them
that's what I
and
was
keep.
suggesting. If there's 25 tasers in need in this department and they last 5 years, then we need 5 per year. If it's 50,000 for the entire lot, then reasonably.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
Yeah,
Yes.
it'd be reasonably $10,000 a year, and that's what
Right.
we'd strive for after the first couple of years of making sure that all of our officers are equipped with these devices. Okay.
Chief, what type of service warranties are on these units, and is that an additional cost?
The warranty is in the purchase price,
Okay.
and if they fail, we send them back and they get repaired. If they fail,
Yeah.
if we break them ourselves, then obviously we're going to have to. So that's built into this price.
Have you endured a tasing? I just want to know.
In fact, I did. I actually went through the training a couple years ago with the Vermont State Police.
How was it?
And I endured a shock from an electronic control device, and it was the longest 5 seconds of my life. But as I told you the last time, and my friend Mr. Whitcomb here put it out in the media,
I was doing
That drew, I think he wanted to be recognized nationally like his former employee Neil Goswami, but
I thought he was offering, wasn't he offering to take the ride with you?
it did generate some phone calls. But anyway, no, but it is an effective tool. And as I stated at the last meeting, I think that being able to recover from this and gain compliance is key to the success of what we're trying to do. So again, I would ask for your support and see what happens.
What would you compare the effect of a taser to?
Would I compare the effect?
Yeah,
Like-
on the
You
receiver.
ever touch
Like,
an electric barbed wire?
I mean, if you're asking me what it felt like, I will tell you, I can remember when I was probably 8 or 9 years old, fooling around with a friend, and he asked me to grab the spark plug on the lawnmower when it was running. That was just a brief experience, and but that's in all honesty, when I was, you guys asked me, I'm telling you, that's what I experienced. I mean, it was sheer stupidity. We've all done it, and it's like putting your tongue on a metal flagpole when it's really cold. I mean, you only do it once, and I'm sure.
That's what you asked him to do.
So I did it.
It's probably like being defibrillated,
Yes, I would imagine.
I would imagine.
But it was, it made me realize that someone could endure that, comply, and the recovery is very quick. I mean, and since you asked, I mean, the only after effect that I felt was believe it or not, my calf muscles felt a little bit tight, but I mean, I was able to take the test and drive home and everything was perfectly fine. And
Stu, I want to volunteer you.
Well, the question is totally irrelevant, but for those of you who watch PBS and might watch Doc Martin, last night on Doc Martin, the police officer received a taser and actually used it, and hit the wrong person, and actually corrected in a regular heartbeat.
Well, there you go, double duty.
Saving time.
Double duty.
So instead of it saying,
Not giving medicine without a license.
I was gonna say, it could say Paul Doucette, Police Chief, or Paul Doucette, comma, MD.
One more question for you, Chief, if you can stand it. But I thought your presentation at the last meeting was really compelling about not using pepper spray and how long it takes to recover from that, and you know how uncomfortable it can be, and the cleanup and all that kind of stuff. And so would this be a complete substitute for that? Would you
Absolutely not.
So you'd still carry both,
Yes.
but you would have opportunities where it would be, you would not need to use the pepper spray.
That's correct. I mean, the electronic control device is basically, you're basically going to get a one-time use out of that. And I mean, if you have a crowd of people, which on occasion, you go to a family fight or whatever, and people are going fisticuffs, sometimes you might have to use the pepper spray on 2 or 3 people at a time. Mm-hmm. That's where that's effective. I mean, we've had a great experience or great relationship back when we used to have a pepper spray company here in Bennington, and where we got to sample and demo a lot of different products. I mean, we have canisters in our vehicles that are called Magnum foggers, and I'll never forget the day at the Ramada that we actually discharged one of those. We had a bunch of people from a state, kind of to our west and a little south, who came off of a tour bus, and they were throwing the furniture in the pool, and we could not get them under control. So we let the Magnum fogger go, and boy, I'll tell you, that was pretty impressive. People were going in the pool for a different reason, but it does work. But that's just a tool. That's not anything that I'd be willing to give up.
All right. So no budget savings, no other savings like that.
No.
But maybe another tool in the arsenal of non-lethal force.
Yes, less than lethal. Yes.
Yeah.
Are these Magnum foggers available retail? So that at my next family reunion, I got one on hand.
Is there other discussion? This may impact insurances, because I know workers' comp.
Yeah, I think it will not change our level of insurance. We obviously have adopted the policy that the state of Vermont is requiring. I think we have a relatively good standing with the League of Cities and Towns, the passive group that insures us. But I will get an answer to that question. I don't think it will change it.
But it might actually save some,
It will reduce workers'
claims, which is great. Any further discussion or movement that you'd like to make on this? All in favor of this line item for 10? Okay, that looks like it's unanimous, 7-0. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
At Saturday's meeting, we talked about the economic and marketing in that area. Mike, you want to get closer to so you can answer any of the questions that the board might have. We talked about the existing budget increase, also in the context of potentially creating another line item separate and distinct from the existing marketing line item for the Southern Vermont Regional Economic Development Initiatives. On the memo, we talked about $20,000, $5,000 increase in the marketing line, but that was a discussion. We never really got past that point, and we might want to do that tonight. And so, before we get to a motion, maybe we can just sort of give a recap, Mike, on where we're at, because the budget has been sorely underfunded for marketing effort, and we recognize that. But now you've got this additional opportunity to participate in the regional side of things. How do you see us fitting together so we can meet the local need as well as the regional need?
So I think in the memo, Stu's recommendation came out of the last budget session where I think the board expressed a desire to support more marketing efforts internally, I'll call them, in terms of local marketing efforts of what Bennington and the town of Bennington put forward to marketing our town. And that's where that additional $5,000 into the marketing line would go. And then we also talked a lot about the move at the legislative level where, from a statewide perspective, we're looking at more regional funds becoming available. And so there are two, specifically the Southern Vermont Regional Economic Development Zone, which suggested both efforts and monies and resources being put towards economic development for the zone, but also marketing, and with the idea that a combined marketing effort would have more weight to it. So the recommendation, it's hard at this point to know exactly where the legislature is going to want to put the resources, but I can tell you that I think from our perspective, whether they move forward or not in this session, we should be thinking about how we can collaborate regionally. And I think Windham County, specifically Brattleboro and Wilmington, and then in our county, Manchester, we're looking at ways to do regional economic development and regional marketing. So I think if we can put, if the board feels comfortable putting aside $20,000, as was suggested at the last meeting, into regional efforts, that allows us to be a little flexible in terms of whether it may go towards an entrepreneurial accelerator program, a recruitment effort, or a straight marketing effort, because we don't really know where that's going to shake out since the zone report is new within the past month. So it really, we're not that far down the road from it, but it does give us the flexibility to say, we have the ability to invest over the course of the next year should the opportunity come up.
So I guess I see this $15,000 or $20,000 as a seed money.
Yes.
But also a reserve now for all intents and purposes.
Sure.
It might just, I should say gather dust, but it might not be accessed during that period of time. What would be of concern to me would be if we have this reserve, but we really want to trigger some active marketing at the local level. I wouldn't want you to be hamstrung not to be able to do local marketing and not have enough resource to do that. And I'm concerned that by doing, the set aside, which is great, I think we've got to do it because I think that's showing that we're going to be active players in the region, that I don't want to put handcuffs, for lack of a better phrase, on the process and limit you during the next fiscal year.
It will be, and Stu, correct me if I'm wrong, but it will be an internal line. So there is the ability for us to be flexible with it, but I think the board has made it clear that the goal is for regional activity. But should an opportunity come up, I would, in my mind, if it's something we didn't want to miss out on, I could see where Stu and myself and Dan would confer on how best to invest that money.
And Tom, we have created a new line for the regional economic development activities, which is it's a 560 account, which is contracted services. So we're not setting this up initially to be a reserve. Assuming that we don't use it, we may reserve it at year end, but it's not going into the budget as a reserve that can be drawn on. It's really going to be, it's going to have maximum flexibility because we've created a new line for it. Okay. And it's not necessarily a reserve.
Mr. Chairman and Mike, I'm of at least two minds with respect to this additional amount of money. Currently, our budget for this sort of thing is next to nothing. And this is a sizable increase. However, and I absolutely endorse it, absolutely. I've said it over and over again that we need to step outside the box and step outside our very small location and tell people about how great we are. My only concern is, and the caveat that I would attach to this expenditure, is that you keep in close contact with the board with respect to how you're going to spend it. I want it to be spent wisely and smartly. That's all.
Jim, what if we did this, instead of having this new line item that we put the money into, we put it into that economic fund. What was the official name of that new fund that we developed last year?
Economic Development Fund.
Economic Development Fund. So that would require select board sign off on any activity, and the purpose of this marketing is to be an economic driver. So any activity that would relate to marketing, whether it be local or regional, would require select board sign off as well.
I could get behind that. However, I just want to say that, you know, we run the risk with something like this of micromanaging. And that's something that I don't think serves us well.
Well, right
Nevertheless, I like your idea and I would support it.
I wanted to try and find a way to put ourselves in the driver's seat when so much is so unclear right now, and it is a fund that we wanted to populate and increase, and so if we're able
It's
to
a really fine suggestion. The part that I would be hesitant about is we need a bigger local activity without having to go to the board to spend money on marketing activity. It should be part of Mike's activities. Anything above and beyond that, I can understand why the board would want to be involved in is this the right way to spend our money? But he's our market person.
I want to move to give Michael an additional $5,000, which is what he was requested at the local level. And that would hopefully go into activities to, it'd be more of a research. So you might be going to trade shows and doing those kind of activities to figure out where our money is best spent locally. And then the additional $20,000, which was what Michael Keane had suggested, would be our nominal.
So our pay to play in terms of
into the economic development fund.
And when they come to ask us to play, then we'll have this dialogue again, where the board will, on how much of that we want to play with. But at least it show the effort and our good faith. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Does that make sense from your perspective?
The only caveat I'll put out there is that within that funding, in the memo that I sent out, there were a lot of big ticket ideas like advertising in the Capital District, right? My only concern would be that if we really want to play it, I mean, an additional $5,000 would allow us to do some of that within our marketing efforts, but it's not going to allow us to do all of that. So is the board prepared to have initiatives come forward like implement a community-wide calendar? And do you want that funding to come out of the Economic Development Fund? If we want to, for each marketing effort, are you wanting me to come to the board to suggest how to use that funding? Because those were other issues that came up at the last meeting, and I want to be careful of those, because I know those aren't necessarily regional, but let's say the regional opportunity doesn't come forward, but there are opportunities for us to invest locally. Is the board prepared to have regular requests come to use that funding?
I think it's difficult to answer the hypotheticals. However, good ideas can be addressed. And something along the lines that you just talked about with respect to, advertising of buses in Albany, that's something I'd get behind.
And we're not gonna get that type of stuff for $5,000, though, is what he's saying.
Right.
Well, fine, that's fine.
Donald first.
Let's hear the ideas.
I'm thinking more logistically.
Michael, I wonder if it would, so I for one would not want all the small requests coming here. That strikes me as putting us in the micromanager seat, but I do like this idea of the pay-to-play, the regional efforts. We've bandied about the number 15 and 20. What if we put an additional 5 into the local marketing effort? Mm-hmm. So we were putting 15 total into the local marketing effort. There's 5 there now, right? Mm-hmm. We know that's woefully underfunded. That would get us at the different places, and then we put 15 in this sort of somewhat more reserved area that you mentioned, which seemed like a pretty good place. Would that get us out of the micromanaging business?
I mean, certainly it would give us that opportunity. I think the question for the board is, I'm thinking back to the last time we used the economic development funds. It was the first time, so I think it took us a little bit longer to get through that process. But is that where the board sees it wanting to spend its time when there are opportunities that we've already decided that we are in favor of, whether it be regional marketing or regional economic development? And I think certainly from my perspective, at an internal fund level, it just means that we're able to be a little more agile. But I think if the board is uncomfortable with that, and this would make the board comfortable, then I think that's fine.
I think it's because it's the first cut.
Sure.
Sure.
It was my understanding that that economic development fund was more for loaning or granting, not for
Substantial
advertising
loans.
and not for being, getting into the game. It was more for, like definite things that were gonna happen.
Project-based.
Yeah, project-based stuff.
Feasibility studies.
So I don't think we should put that money into that fund. I think we should leave it separate and not, leave it up to Mike's discretion. I think Mike is pretty savvy about what needs to be spent.
Feels like we could not say, just, here's the 15,000, if you've got a proposal that's packaged.
Sure.
Something that's put together, we can see the different things that go into it, bring that whole proposal to us, and then we'll send you on the way. We don't want to see it in pieces, but if it's in a separate line item budget, maybe, and we just say, look, don't spend this on coffee or.
Well, I think the expectation too would be that if we have the opportunity, even if it's in an internal fund, that if there's an opportunity for us to partner regionally, that at an exorbitant level, like $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, that's not a decision I would make by myself. It would certainly involve probably both Stu and Dan, but I'm also thinking Bill Colvin, who's highly engaged at the regional level, especially around the Economic Development Fund. And I would also see myself coming to the board to say this is what we're planning to do. Are there any major objections? But
it could be something that can't, say it's the day after we have a meeting and, they want to, they want you to partner with some advertising thing, and if we have to approve it, it's 2 weeks away, and he doesn't have time to
Every
do
group
that.
would have to approve that, every town that's buying it would have to
Yeah.
approve it, and they would have to bank on some time frame
Sure.
where
Absolutely.
discussions.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think it is whatever level the board is comfortable at in terms of whether you're comfortable with it being an internal line item that we access for regional opportunities, because I also can't guarantee that it's going to be a one lump sum. Here's our buy-in at $20,000. It may be an opportunity at a regional level to buy into this program at $3,000 and work with Windham County or work with a specific town like Wilmington on a project at much different levels. So I think my concern is that if it was simply, hey, let's buy in at $20,000 to play, but it may be us multiple levels at multiple frequencies trying to access the funds. And that's just based on what I'm reading. There are a couple different programs in the zone report.
Yeah.
But it may be, what I'm probably not seeing is a regional marketing effort where we simply hand over a check for $20,000 and say, put it to use. But I might see where we would partner on an opportunity for a trade show, or partner on an opportunity for a transit promotion or something like that, where now we're contributing at whatever level we're comfortable with on whatever projects we're comfortable with.
Right now, it's just a report, and that's the
Right.
challenge of this whole discussion.
Yeah.
And it goes back to, I think, what Donna was saying, we got to take, the 15,000 probably. The other part, I think that sort of goes into a limbo until there's something that's actually been created, and then you would come to the board and say, here's what's being done, and here's how it might play out, and get the consensus of the board as to how it wants to play. All this is good faith money indicating we're interested in participating. Doesn't mean we're going to use it.
I also think we're talking a lot about the actual zone report or the regional marketing plan, but everything we're doing is regionally based. When we market Bennington, even though we're marketing the town of Bennington, we're really marketing the region and all the assets. So I could also see the regional economic development line being used from here on out for just the partnership activities that we do. And I don't think it has to be necessarily tied to the zone report or to the Southern Vermont Southern Vermont marketing plan. But I think what we're seeing is for us to play at the level that we want to be impactful in major metropolitan areas, it's going to have to be a joint effort anyways. Plus, I mean, I think we're a much more desirable location when you take in what surrounds us as well as attributes and assets.
And in terms of the zone report, we still have some things to go through with the legislature. And with funding sources at the state level, since the report itself was unfunded. So we're going to have to have a lot of other conversations going on.
It also was very clear in the zone report that some of the recommendations were for grant monies,
Yeah.
where it would be matching funds. So it wouldn't necessarily be, it may be still a project that we put forward, but the zone may match those funds if it impacts the entire region. So I think there's like Mike said, there's a lot of groundwork to cover with the collaboration for the region, but I think this is a good foot forward. And I think it's whatever the board is comfortable with.
John's idea, if you're really going to try to, one, we've worried about how we're going to refinance, so to speak, that fund over time. If, in fact, we take, we'll use Donald's example, 15,000, and put it into regional economic development initiatives, if we create it as a reserve instead of a 563 account, an 84 or 840 account, it allows us to use it in the fiscal year in which it's created, if we decide to. But at the end of the year, anything that's left there then moves into a reserve, and the board can designate it into which fund it wishes it to go. That would be my recommendation. I appreciate what Mike is saying, but I think the message we should be sending out, and it will appear on the warning, that we're setting aside $15,000 in reserve for regional economic development initiatives. That's going to be listed on the annual warning, because all of our reserves, we have to tell people, should they approve the budget, this is where they're going to be used if there's any funds left over out of this account. And that sends the message.
I think it does good.
Publicly, that we're actually getting in.
How does that sound to you guys?
How's that work in terms of when the funds are required? Would it necessarily have to come to the board? I don't think it would at that point, right? Because
Technically, reserve funds should not be expended without your knowledge.
okay, so crossing that bridge. I'm just extremely apprehensive about a project that's unknown at best. And to Justin's point at the last meeting, what are we marketing? And understanding what we're getting for these different efforts, that needs to be weighed before we can just throw ourselves out there. I think we all feel that way. So if moving it into that reserve fund is the way to do it, then that's great.
It creates the reserve, and it creates the opportunity over time to increase that reserve if we see that we're starting to have a good bang for the buck.
Right, and it forces that second conversation.
That's a great solution. I like that very much. I also feel, though, that most of Bennington would probably agree that would like to see, of the marketing you're doing right now, most people would probably like to see 2 or 3 times as much. You know, so if we can make it possible to do 2 or 3 times as much as what you're already doing, and set up this reserve in case the big fish comes along, seems to me that that's a win-win.
So 15,000 in each way does that.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So we have 30 times
what we're already doing.
Yeah.
Can we have a motion to
So
that effect?
I'll move that.
I'll second that, but I think he has something on the floor. Is that?
No, we just had a discussion.
Oh,
Go ahead.
So I'll second.
Well,
Sarah.
he did make a motion.
That's what I did too.
Yeah, he did. There was a second.
Oh, it was to go into that.
But it wasn't
that-
seconded,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
Draw it.
Thanks. I think we're getting there the same way.
Yeah.
Just different.
Okay, so 15 and 15, yeah.
So what we're basically doing is we're increasing Michael's marketing budget by $10,000.
Right.
And we're creating a new reserve fund at $15,000 for economic development initiatives.
Regional.
Thank you.
Regional.
And no trips to Paris to market things.
Unless you
If I
take me with
if I
you.
do, I'm taking you guys with me.
Other discussion relative to the motion that's on the floor?
Well, good solution. Give me a second, right? Do we
I
get
second.
that?
We had
Yeah, got it, second.
Yeah, Sharon made the motion
Yeah.
and Don seconded.
Yeah.
I'm concerned. We are increasing it by $10,000, and I see all the different ways that we can spend it, but I still don't know where it's going to go. To Donald's point, Michael, I don't want to micromanage either. but I still would like to have some idea of what we're tackling, what we're trying to do, and why. Because right now, I mean, we're talking about all these different things, and the money can disappear in a day, or a month, you know? If we're looking at these buses, I think that we wouldn't be able to afford
Sure.
for a full month, so.
Well, John, I think, you know, perhaps to set your mind at ease somewhat, after our conversation in Tom's office, Mike and Dan and I sat around together and decided that when the budget process is finished, we were going to prepare a work plan that's going to outline what we think are the initiatives we want to take on this year, essentially starting to set some of those goals. I think that's a place for us to at least highlight what we think we'd like to do with it. It gives us some time to think about it, because we initially started with $5,000 in marketing.
Yep.
Now, if this motion is approved, we now have $15,000. It changes perhaps the game we can play, but we would be back to the board with a work plan saying, here's what we hope to do with these funds within this particular line item. Does that make sense to you?
No, it does. That's a good way to tackle this. I just think even on our side, we're putting it's marketing in a nutshell. You never know what you're going to get back for what the efforts that you put out there. It's just kind of the nature of the business. So a little more research is great, and if we can have a presentation afterwards, then that.
When do you think you can have that? Before the board, the
Well,
March meeting?
Yeah, I mean, we started the conversation, but that's about as far based on what we were gonna see here. So I think within the next, 30 to 60 days.
So I'd like to
we
see
could
it
totally-
actually, because I think the town would like to see it, because we're probably gonna get questions. Have a presentation to the board.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to stipulate to this motion, just so that we're clear and above board on this, that we stipulate the conditions with which Stu just mentioned with respect to how it's going to be done and how this money is going to be spent.
I think what you're saying is you'd like an amendment to the.
Yes, I'd like to amend.
I think you could probably move on the motion and then make another motion relative to how you would like that reported out. Meaning that a work plan will be developed and presented to the board within 30 days.
So moved.
Oh, we gotta move on this
Wait,
way.
I can't do that.
Yeah. Is that acceptable to proceed with it that way? Because it could be kind of cumbersome to vote other than the way the motion is read. And Michelle's going to read it out back.
Okay, which one?
The first one, we haven't got a second.
Okay, so yes, Sharon made a motion to increase Mike's budget by $10,000 and $15,000 to the regional marketing program. Don seconded it. But then we talked about, Stu explained his proposal of doing the 15, yes.
Yeah. Was your motion 15 or 10?
No,
It was 15.
The motion was
It was the way he had stated it the first time.
Yeah, there's already $5,000 in the budget, adding 10.
correct, we're adding 10 to that.
Right.
Total amount we're dealing with is $25,000.
Okay, does everyone understand the motion?
I guess I almost feel that it would be appropriate to have that amendment in there for this vote, because I'm much more comfortable voting yes,
Okay.
knowing that we have a presentation coming before, even if we just say before.
30 to 60 day
30.
presentation.
30
Well,
days.
it's up to Michael and Stu.
I mean, we can have it in 30 days and it will just depend on what we have on the agenda for the.
The bottom
but I
line
think
is the
that-
money does not get
Yeah.
spent until the presentation.
Well,
So you guys accept a amendment to your motion?
I'll amend the motion to
Okay.
reflect that.
And second, you accept?
Yes, I'd do that, so we'd review it in the next 30 days before the vote, and we'd be able to explain it.
I'll get it to you before July. How about that?
You got
No.
next week.
That's how I understood.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine.
Good.
Okay.
Set. Is that enough time? Well, let's deal with the reality.
Here's the issue we face, very quickly. We meet next Monday night, January 25th. We meet the second Monday in February, which is, I can't remember the date, 8th or 9th. We would not meet again until the floor meeting, which is February 29th. So it's probably the 15th. I don't know. But normally we only meet twice in February if in fact the floor meeting falls in the month of February. It would mean we'd be presenting a work plan at the
16th for
which might not be good. And,
So but we'll look to present in March, at one of the two meetings in March?
Well,
the first Tuesday in March.
The budget's going to be voted on.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but the amendment allowed it to go into the budget, but not to have the money spent until the board had reviewed this plan. So the money can still go there, it can still go into the budget, and then if the plan comes up, because it's going into reserve funds, if the plan comes about and none of us agree on it, and think that it shouldn't be spent, then it sits in limbo for a full year, at which point we can then shift it.
Well, the money wouldn't be spent until July anyhow, right?
Right, well, right, but I mean, if we can't agree on a plan, then it doesn't get spent and then it moves.
Just if there's a question at the annual meeting floor,
Yeah.
then we're going to have to say, here's what we're planning on doing. And hopefully that will be enough for the audience.
Actually, if the board desired, we could meet on the 8th, Cassie was right, and the 22nd,
Yeah.
and then the floor meeting would be the 29th the following month. So if you really wanted to push us, we could have it ready by the 22nd.
I mean,
That sounds like it'd be simple.
I just want to make sure we're giving people enough time to come up with a plan that's going to work too,
Yes.
and not just throwing something together for a deadline that we've created.
That's right.
You know?
And again, this doesn't have no effect till July.
July.
And it's
I
just,
wanna see it.
I think maybe we've got, it'll give you a chance to sort of organize the framework. And if there's a floor meeting question, we'll be able to be responsive to it.
Okay.
If we meet on the 22nd, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay,
No,
so it's 5.
No, we're not gonna meet on it,
Okay.
we're gonna give them time to review,
Okay.
and it's going into the budget as a reserve line item,
Yeah.
but we will.
Subject to our approval.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
in favor of
I
that
feel
motion
much
as
more
amended?
comfortable not being pushed.
Sorry.
To try to do something.
Favor of the motion, all in favor of the motion as amended?
What's the amendment? Please read it back.
To provide a work
Made.
plan.
So
What?
the motion,
To amend to, yes, oh my gosh.
the motion is to add $10,000 to Michael's budget.
With a presentation, the amendment includes a presentation.
A work plan
a work
presented
plan.
to the select board
Correct.
sometime between March and
Yeah,
I'll
we
second
had
that.
30 to 60 days, but now
Let's
are we?
do 60 days.
Okay.
60 days.
So it's done. and
Yep.
it's etched in stone.
60 days from tonight?
5 pages.
Yeah, it's 60 days from tonight.
Jim, so in very, if there's $30,000, we take half of it, and we're saying.
it's 25,000.
Right.
We're taking 10.
No, so there's
No,
30
no,
total.
I understand, because
So, and we're basically splitting it.
I
So
said
we're
if I
saying,
wanted a plan.
of that 15, we want to see a plan, and the other 15, we're going to put in reserve for, if one of these regional marketing thing comes along.
Regional economic development.
Regional economic development thing comes along,
Yep.
right, yeah. So we will get to review a plan for the 15 towns in the next 60 days. Okay.
Okay. Great. We're all in favor of that process, and we have now voted, all in favor? Okay. 7 in favor and 0 opposed to that process.
Thank you.
I think that's all that we have in the context of. Yes, we need an executive session.
You will have an executive session on the 3 salaries for the manager, the clerk, and the treasurer.
In the information you gave us relative to impact on the dollar.
Yes.
On the budget.
That has been adjusted downward.
Yep.
It would be about 0.76% on the tax rate. The total comes to 75,890 with these additions. And as I said at the beginning and the outset of these discussions, we're using the grand list from last year. Any growth in the grand list will mitigate these impacts. So it's likely that our projected 1.6 cent increase in the overall tax rate will be something less than that. Because we are seeing, I think the chief assessor indicated somewhere close to 1% growth in the grand list this year, which would essentially make a penny zero. And just to make you feel even a little bit better, The VSD projected tax rate is going down about 4.6 cents if they're in a household.
Even with the redundant state auditors, accountants figures,
No, those are,
they're figured in.
those are Rick Pembroke's estimates based on the data that they have presented.
Let's, probably good news for the citizens this year, but frankly, next year is a whole different ballgame. We won't, can't anticipate, but at the same time, we've got a lot of big ticket items coming down the road that we need to address. And we didn't even talk about the garage. We heard a very good presentation from RJ on that. This facility, albeit
I did
there's
promise you that I would put together a list, an estimated cost of the various capital projects that we are facing over probably the next 5 years.
Great.
And I will have that to you, I would say sometime, perhaps the end of March or early April. It may be best to present it to the newly constituted board.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea.
Welcome to the board.
Here you go. What your ideas were.
Your inheritance.
But, that's part of, I think, our responsibilities to be not only doing, today, but looking out of it and seeing if we can anticipate so that our tax rate doesn't get so whacked so hard that voters will say, what did this board do that made it so nice, but it was really hollow. So it's like the emperor's clothes. So we do need a motion to go in executive session relative to.
Second.
And could you stay for just the first part? Thank you very much.
Thank you.